It was an unseasonably warm autumn afternoon in Manhattan. The leaves, painted in shades of fire, floated gently down onto the streets, adding a soft touch to the usual frenzy of Fifth Avenue. Luxury storefronts shimmered under the city sun, tourists bustled with shopping bags, and yellow cabs honked like mechanical geese. Among the crowd, Kai Madison Trump, now 18 years old, stood out not because of her name but because of the calm elegance with which she carried herself, wearing a sporty cap with the U.S. Women's Amateur Golf Championship logo. Kai had just stepped out of a charity golf luncheon held at the New York Athletic Club. Despite being the eldest grandchild of the sitting president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, Kai had largely avoided the limelight, choosing instead to focus on her passion for golf, youth empowerment, and education-based philanthropy. Her name was recognized by many, but Kai preferred to be known for her actions, not her bloodline. As she waited for her driver near the corner of 58th and 5th, Kai glanced at her phone to check messages. That's when she felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she came face to face with a woman who looked like life had tried to erase her, wrinkled skin, tangled hair, eyes clouded with sorrow. She wore a patched-up coat and her hands trembled slightly as she held them out, palms open. "Can you give me $1? Just one. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Kai blinked, surprised not by the request but by the sincerity in the woman's voice. She had been approached before, many times, in fact, but this was different. There was something in the woman's tone, a cracked fragility that made Kai pause. She looked around. People passed by without a glance. A man in a suit swerved to avoid the woman. A couple looked annoyed, whispering something under their breath. But Kai didn't look away. "What's your name?" Kai asked softly. The woman hesitated. Dolores McIntyre. I used to be a teacher. Before the layoffs. Before the cancer. Before the medical bills. I'm not crazy, I promise. Kai's heart stirred. A teacher? Her father and grandfather always emphasized respecting educators, and Kai herself had deep admiration for anyone who had dedicated their lives to lifting others up. She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet, but paused. She didn't hand her $1. Instead, she asked, "How far would you go to change your life if someone believed in you?" Dolores looked confused. I don't understand." Kai glanced at her driver pulling up. She made a decision, one that would soon dominate headlines across the country. "Come with me," she said. "Where?" Dolores asked. "To lunch," Kai replied, smiling. "But not just any lunch. You're coming as my guest to the Ritz-Carlton. And you're not paying a dime." Dolores gasped. "Wait, what?" "No, look at me, I'm unfilthy." Kai placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Not to me, you're not." As the driver opened the door, the two women climbed in, one a teenaged heiress to a political dynasty, the other a broken soul forgotten by society. But what neither of them knew was that this spontaneous act of kindness was about to ignite a media firestorm, inspire millions, and even spark policy conversations in Congress, because by the end of that week, Dolores McIntyre would become the face of second chances in America, and Kai Trump would be called a silent revolutionary. The black SUV glided smoothly through midtown traffic, heading straight for the Ritz-Carlton's Central Park. Inside, Kai sat beside Dolores, offering her a bottle of chilled water from the car's console. The woman hesitated before taking it with trembling hands. Kai broke the silence. "You said you used to be a teacher. What did you teach?" Dolores cleared her throat. "English literature. High school. Up in the Bronx. 22 years. I loved it until the school lost funding. Budget cuts, they said. After that, things spiraled." Kai listened intently as Dolores recounted how her husband had died of a heart attack, how the cancer diagnosis had come soon after, and how the mounting medical bills had swallowed her modest savings. The insurance had dropped her after a missed premium. No family. No one to turn to. She tried shelters but was robbed. She tried panhandling but felt her dignity dying by the hour. As the SUV pulled up in front of the Ritz, doormen in pressed uniforms opened the door. The moment Dolores stepped out, heads turned. Her patched coat, matted hair, and worn shoes didn't belong in this world of designer purses and $1,000 champagne flutes. Yet, beside her stood Kai Trump, smiling like they were long-lost friends. The maitre d' at the hotel's luxurious restaurant hesitated for a moment, eyeing Dolores, but Kai flashed her ID and politely said, "Table for two, please. Private booth. My guest is a retired educator. And a hero." Seated in a secluded booth with a skyline view, Kai handed Dolores the menu. "I don't think I can pronounce half of this," Dolores chuckled nervously. "Then we'll order what we can pronounce together," Kai smiled. "And for dessert, you're getting creme brulee. Non-negotiable." Lunch was warm, not just in flavor but in tone. Dolores began to loosen up. She spoke about books she used to teach To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men, and how she saw herself in the characters now. Kai listened, fascinated. "You still speak like a teacher," Kai said. "You have presence." Dolores looked down, hiding the tears forming in her eyes. "Presence doesn't pay for food." Kai leaned forward. "But what if I told you that presence might just be your ticket out?" It was then she revealed her plan. She wanted to sponsor Dolores personally. Not just a handout, a full hand-up. Clothes, temporary housing, medical checkups, and if Dolores wanted it, help getting back into education or nonprofit work. Dolores stared, stunned. "Why me?" "Because," Kai said, "you asked me for $1 when you needed a miracle. Maybe I'm not the miracle, but maybe I can be the match that lights it." As they left the Ritz, a guest had recorded part of the lunch and posted it online with the caption, "Kai Trump just took a homeless woman to lunch at the Ritz and treated her like royalty." Within 12 hours, the video had over 25 million views on X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. By the next morning, #KaiTrumpChallenge was trending across the country. Influencers, athletes, and even a few politicians began taking homeless guests out to lunch in their cities, posting their experiences in solidarity. Meanwhile, news outlets scrambled for interviews. The Today Show, Fox News, CNN, even BBC World covered the story. Dolores was offered a fresh wardrobe, media coaching, and even a speaking slot at an upcoming education conference, but Kai had one condition for all of it: if you tell your story, tell it with the dignity of the teacher you've always been. Don't be a victim. Be a survivor. America, still bitterly divided on politics, found in this moment something rare, a story that transcended red and blue, rich and poor. A young woman who could have ignored a plea instead changed a life, and maybe more. 3 days after the video went viral, Dolores McIntyre sat on a velvet armchair on national television, dressed in a tailored navy blue pantsuit provided by a women's empowerment nonprofit. Her hair had been professionally done, and a makeup artist had carefully highlighted her worn but beautiful face. Sitting beside her on the set of the Today Show was Kai Trump, poised and humble in a simple cream sweater and jeans. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "today we bring you a story that's touched hearts across America, a story not about wealth or politics, but about human decency." As cameras rolled, Dolores shared her truth. The lights didn't faze her. She spoke with the confidence of someone who had once commanded classrooms full of restless teenagers. She told of how it felt to go from Teacher of the Year to sleeping behind dumpsters. She told of the humiliation of panhandling outside fast food joints, how people looked through her like she was invisible. Then she turned to Kai, voice trembling, "But this young lady saw me. She didn't see a homeless woman. She saw Dolores." Kai took her hand gently. "All I did was listen. That's all it takes sometimes." When the host asked Kai why she didn't just give her the $1 and move on, Kai answered, "Because my grandfather always says, if you're going to think anyway, you might as well think big. And I thought, what if instead of $1, I gave her dignity and opportunity?" The audience erupted in applause. By that afternoon, Dolores had received over 9,000 emails, many from former students who saw her on TV. One wrote, "Ms. McIntyre, you saved me in 10th grade. You told me I had potential when no one else believed in me. Now I work at NASA. Thank you." The outpouring was overwhelming. Donors offered to fund a foundation in her name. A publishing house proposed a memoir. Even the Department of Education reached out to involve her in a new teacher retention initiative. But perhaps the most shocking moment came that evening when President Donald J. Trump mentioned the story during a White House press briefing. "I'm proud of my granddaughter," he said, standing beside Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. Kai didn't ask permission. She didn't make it political. She just did what we all should do: treat people with respect. And now a forgotten teacher is inspiring a nation. Media outlets from both sides of the aisle, Fox News and MSNBC alike, united in praise for Kai. Late-night hosts made emotional monologues instead of punchlines. Even celebrities like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Reese Witherspoon, and LeBron James tweeted in support. Back in New York, Kai launched the McIntyre Initiative, a nonprofit dedicated to helping homeless educators and underfunded teachers re-enter the workforce. The nonprofit raised over $8.5 million in 72 hours, but amidst all the buzz, Kai remained grounded. "This isn't about me," she told one reporter. "This is about how we stop walking past people and start walking beside them." And Dolores? She had her own big moment coming. An exclusive invitation arrived to address Congress during National Education Week. And she said yes. On a brisk Wednesday morning, the marble steps of the United States Capitol gleamed under the sun. Inside, the grand chamber buzzed with anticipation as senators, representatives, press, and educators filled the gallery. At precisely 10 a.m., Dolores McIntyre, once homeless, now hailed as a symbol of perseverance, approached the podium. She wore a charcoal gray blazer, simple gold earrings, and carried nothing but a folder of notes in her weathered hands. But her presence spoke louder than any wardrobe. "Mr. Speaker, members of Congress," she began, her voice steady and clear, "I stand before you today not as a politician, not as a celebrity, but as a teacher. A woman who once taught Shakespeare and Steinbeck and who not long ago slept in the back of an abandoned van." The room fell silent. She told them how her life had unraveled, how bureaucracy had failed her, how society didn't seem to care. "I did everything right," she said. "I worked. I gave. I taught your children. And when I needed help, I was discarded." Then she paused, looked up, and said, "But one girl changed everything." Dolores explained how Kai Trump, a teenage athlete with wealth and privilege, chose empathy over indifference. "She didn't see a vagrant. She saw a human being. She didn't give me $1. She gave me a chance." As the speech went on, tears welled up in the eyes of many in the room. A few representatives, including some who rarely agreed on anything, nodded solemnly. Even C-SPAN's usually dispassionate commentators remarked on the emotional electricity in the chamber. She ended with a powerful appeal: "There are thousands more like me out there, teachers, veterans, parents, living in shadows. This nation cannot thrive if it leaves its educators behind. We deserve better. And more importantly, your children deserve better." Thunderous applause erupted. Some stood. Others wept. The clip aired live, and by the end of the day, it had been viewed over 50 million times online. Late that evening, President Trump posted on Truth Social, "Incredible speech by Dolores McIntyre. Kai is a shining light for her generation. America needs more moments like this." Suddenly, congressional leaders introduced a bipartisan bill named the McIntyre Act, aimed at creating a federal safety net for retired and displaced teachers. It included mental health services, housing grants, and recertification programs. Both sides of the aisle called it the first true bipartisan effort in years. Meanwhile, Kai kept working behind the scenes. She refused offers to appear on reality shows or do sponsorship deals. "This isn't about fame," she said in a brief interview. "It's about fixing a problem we've all ignored." That week, Time magazine featured Dolores and Kai on its cover under the headline, "The Spark That Lit a Nation." Critics who initially dismissed the viral video as a publicity stunt had gone quiet. What began as a dollar request became a national movement. Back in New York, Dolores returned to a high school not as a teacher yet, but as a speaker. Her old students cheered. Many brought flowers. One boy, barely 16, hugged her and whispered, "You make me want to be a teacher too." And in that moment, Dolores knew the story wasn't ending, it was just beginning. 2 months after Dolores McIntyre's powerful speech on Capitol Hill, the ripple effect of her story and Kai Trump's compassion was still sweeping across the nation. At a press event held at the White House Rose Garden, President Donald J. Trump stood behind the podium flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of Education Ben Carson, and Kai Trump, who looked calm yet radiant in a light blue blazer. The air was crisp, the American flag fluttering behind them. Today, the president began, "We sign into law the McIntyre Education Recovery Act, a bold bipartisan plan to ensure that no American teacher ever ends up on the street again." He turned to Kai. "I'm proud of my granddaughter. She reminded us all of what this country is supposed to be. We're not a nation of cynics. We're a nation of second chances." The cameras clicked and flashed as Dolores McIntyre was invited up to speak once more. She wore a soft pearl gray dress and held her speech in one hand, but this time she barely looked at it. She began, "They say $1 doesn't go far anymore. But that day I asked Kai for one. I wasn't asking for $1. I was asking if someone still saw me. And her answer changed my life." The crowd, White House staffers, teachers flown in from across the country, military veterans, and even students listened with rapt attention. "And now, with this new law," she continued, "maybe the next teacher who falls won't have to wait for a miracle on a city sidewalk." After the ceremony, Dolores was presented with a framed copy of the bill bearing the president's signature. But what made her tear up most was the gift Kai handed her quietly afterward, a shadow box with a simple inscription, "To the woman who taught us all, from the girl who listened." Kai. Inside the box, behind the glass, was a $1 bill, not the original, but one signed by President Trump, Dolores, and Kai together. In the weeks that followed, The McIntyre Initiative opened its first transitional housing center for former educators in Pennsylvania. Kai began visiting schools across the country, encouraging students to look up from their phones and see who's standing in front of them. Dolores began writing her memoir, titled The Dollar That Changed Everything. Publishers were already bidding millions for the rights. Netflix announced a documentary, A Dollar of Dignity, to be directed by Ron Howard. Other Trump grandchildren, including Spencer and Chloe, joined Kai on the board of the McIntyre Foundation, pledging their own time and effort toward educational reform and homelessness awareness. But the most moving part of the entire story came from a handwritten letter Kai received from a young girl in Iowa named Maddie. Dear Kai, I saw your video. There's a girl at school who eats lunch alone. Everyone says she smells funny. Today I sat with her. We talked. She's really nice. Her name is Marcy. I didn't give her $1, but I gave her a smile. Thank you for teaching me to see people. Kai kept that letter in her backpack wherever she went. For all the headlines and awards, it was that note, written in pink crayon, that reminded her of why she had stopped that day on the sidewalk. And so, what started as a homeless woman's quiet plea, "Can you give me $1?" became a national awakening. It wasn't about money. It was about being seen, about listening, and about how one small act of kindness from an unlikely person can light up the darkest corners of a nation. Because in the end, America wasn't shocked by the dollar. It was shocked by the power of compassion in the hands of a teenage girl, Kai Madison Trump, who chose to care.